Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another live episode of Unlock Your Potential. And today we have another special guest from all the way from Portugal who has joined in. And I'm very happy and pleased to see the attire, the dress he's wearing, which is our national dress, Shalwar Kameez. So thank you very much, Mr. John Hillbery, for just giving us this gesture of the attire that you're wearing on this program, considering we are doing it live from Pakistan, Islamabad, and we have our regular panelists, Mr. Neville Gunn from UK and Kamran Rizvi from Islamabad. So thank you very much, everyone. And let me give a quick introduction. Brother, I would request Mr. John Hillbery to introduce yourself because, ladies and gentlemen, today we have this guest who didn't go through a formal education, and yet he managed to lead a life which is full of rich experience. As we say, experience is the best school, yet the fool learns in no other. And Mr. John Hillbery has proven it that the way you joined in at the age of 19, the Swedish freight forwarding, I think freighter, and then experiencing all the low tides, high tides, ending up as the director of one of the largest Bank of America, as a director of communication, and then becoming an advisor for BCCI, which everybody knows in Pakistan, one of the largest banks. So I rather request you, Mr. Hillbery, why don't you give us the next 2-3 minutes, this beautiful story about such a rich experience that you went through in all your life, please.
Well, I speak from a place of emptiness because when you have no grounding in a formal education, you just have to accept whatever happens. But somehow consciously, as an infant, I said, I knew that I was a sentient being. And I was aware of being a sentient being from a very young age. And somehow something inside advised me that I would be informed and educated as I went through life. And I accepted that message or understanding I had within myself. And so I stepped into the world to see what it would do with me. And that has been the process of my life. It's been the living of life and following whatever it was that the high tide, low tide, as you very nicely expressed it, took me. And it led me into a world of extraordinary insights. Because if you allow yourself to be educated by nature and by the environment, you find that everything opens up to you and you are not trapped in one particular place. You become not an engineer or a philosopher or a road sweeper. You become anything you want to be. So I don't feel trapped in one particular line of education, nor informed by one particular line of education. I've been informed by activity, movement, nature, experience, and the people I've met. And I've done my best to absorb the best that I could from the best that I could find to live what I think we all should try to do, and that's live a good life. That's the summary. If we had a few hours, I'd read a book to you that I've written, but that would not be.
Thank you very much, and very well summarized, very eloquently summarized, and I can see the smile on Neville's and Kamran my faces. So Neville, I know all the lingo, all the words echoes around what you have been advocating, activity-based learning.
Yeah, certainly, John. I mean, you've become an ambassador for us overnight, I think. Because, you know, like you, I mean, I went through a formal education, so I was lucky enough to have that opportunity. But the best education I had, I thought, was in the Scouts, because it literally was you just went and did it, whether it was tying a knot or steering a boat and learning how to tack into the wind, which from a mathematician and a physicist at that young age, I thought was impossible. I mean, if the wind is blowing at me, how on earth can I put the sail in that direction to actually take advantage of moving forwards? I mean, surely the only way I can go is backwards. But that teaches you a very humble lesson, frankly, that as long as you're moving slightly forwards at any one point, it's great. But expand a little bit more about your seamanship, because I bet you probably learned an awful lot of good stuff and probably a lot of bad stuff along the way. If you could expand in that arena, because that experience, I think, is definitely worth sharing.
Well, I started work at 14 and worked in a shipping company dealing with bills of lading, shipping documentation, which in fact represented money, wealth and goods, while goods were on board a vessel going from A to B. In the case of the work that I did was the London Royal Albert and King George docks to New Zealand and Australia. And after 3 years of that, of earning £3, 2 and 6pence a week, which Neville, you may remember what that means. It means nothing. Doesn't even buy an ice cream today. I decided that I needed to earn a bit more money, and I went into a research company, the first research company, which had a thing called the Atlas computer, which was bigger than my whole house put together, which did the analysis for our research. And then I decided to hitchhike around the world. And many people thought when I said I'm going to hitchhike around the world that I was either mad or going to become mad. Probably both, they were both correct in both cases. But by the time I'd hiked around Europe and I arrived in Genoa, I'd run out of money. And I lined up with others and in a queue, and I joined the Swedish Seamen's Union. In there lies a story, but anyway, I became a member of the union and I joined as a deckhand a vessel called Floria, and I went to the United States. What did I learn? Not much about sailing at that stage, but a lot about humanity, because my study has always been the human being. I've only ever been interested in the human being. Who came in front of me? I looked, my sentient ways told me much more about that person would normally, I suppose, be apparent to anybody else, and I developed that. So joining a vessel with a crew of 20 who were of diverse nationalities, characters, backgrounds. Some had run away to sea and could never go ashore in Europe. Some couldn't go ashore in America. But they became my crewmates. They became my buddies. And as wild as they were, I relied upon them in dark and dangerous situations at sea, and both in many of the cities that we went to. So what did I learn at sea? I learned a lot about people, a lot about men working together. And it built upon my knowledge of the City of London where I was working. So my study has only been in people, Neville. I sail a bit. I sailed out of West Wittering. I love sailing across to the Isle of Wight. In fact, I took an oyster around the Isle of Wight in the 100th anniversary of the America's Cup, which I much enjoyed. But even then, really, it was my study of my fellow man, or my fellow human being, that has been my major interest. So I learned a lot more about people. People without a home, people who lived on board a ship. I remember arriving in Algiers and being shot at, and I wondered what Algeria was all about, and suddenly I found about French Algeria and about the uprising. I was in the middle of it. So in moving and traveling and with people and at sea, my interest in cultures and languages and history of those places I went to grew immensely. So the study moved from people to place, and from place to history, and from place to culture, and from place to literature, and from place to poetry, and from place to music. So my links with the sea took me to a broader dimension of what it means to live and to understand, if you understand my language.
All right. Very well explained. Very well.
Did I answer your question, Neville? No.
Neville had a disconnect, but he's back now. No, but I think I very nicely explained the whole chronological experience in a very, very eloquent manner. Cameron, over to you. Any
Yes.
Since you know him more, you know the deep insights of Mr. Hillbery. So, would love to hear a question from you.
Well, I've seen him like the ocean, and I've only seen the waves. I've never quite
Wow.
I've not gone snorkeling, so I can't say much. But I would certainly ask Mr. John Hillbery about, in life experiences, we are learning if we are reflecting, and we are reflecting if we are making mistakes and things go against expectation. And oftentimes there are ups and there are downs. So I was very eager to know about what those challenges were in this journey, because it is rich in variety. And you mentioned people, place, history, culture, music, poetry, and the works. But in this, where were the moments of, oh my God, and aha, those highs and lows? A bit of, and as a result, how did that change you? What were you and what did you become?
Life was confirmed for me by extraordinary events and moments. How does an uneducated man become a director of communications of the world's biggest bank? How does that happen? I don't know, but it happened. That was a process of me growing and becoming and meeting people who thought I could do what they needed me to do, and I didn't know if I could do what they wanted me to do, but I did it. We become, actually, what Shakespeare says, players and actors on the stage. And we can become whatever we want to be. We have to imagine what we are, because we are so full of potential as individuals, and we don't seek the human potential. We can become what we see, but more importantly, we can become what we love, what we admire. And the great hidden mystery of life is that we're all born with all the talents and all the skills that we need to possess for that particular individual, but we never discover what they are. And it's certainly not following our passions, it's following our inbuilt talent. Everybody has inbuilt talent. I haven't met anybody without a talent. And we have to develop that. People are given the wrong jobs and the wrong education. We have to guide people into the right place, because where they're living is what they have to see, and it's in that place where they're living is what they have to become, the role they play in the community. So each of us has to find out what our task is in our community. It's a search. That was a revelation. But I suppose the most recent great revelation that I've had, I went to a beach here. It's a 30-mile beach. There was nobody on it in June 4 years ago. And I asked nature if it would confirm my understanding of nature. In fact, I meditated for about 4 hours. And I have found that when you merge yourself with nature, nature talks to you. It may sound madness, but it talks to you. You become one with nature and it speaks. You see things which appear. So I had meditated for 4 hours and I said, please show me a sign that you know I'm here. And after 4 hours, I got up and walked down to the water's edge, the Atlantic, facing this time towards the United States. And out of nowhere came the largest marlin I've ever seen in my life. It leapt out of the water at a speed which was phenomenal, because it achieved a height of about 6 feet in front of my eyes. And it turned and twisted and eyeballed me and recognized me and dived into the sea. And I shouted, "Did anyone see that?" There was no one there to see it. It was only me. I know for sure that creature had tapped in somehow to me. Truly, that happened. Now, that's not the first time in my life this has happened to me. It happened to me at sea a number of times. And it's happened to me in moments of being in the zone of cricket, for example. When you suddenly move in a direction, when someone has driven hard and you start running in the direction, the ball hasn't even left the bat, and somehow you're running and you dive and the ball lands in your hand and you roll and you've caught the guy out, and you don't even know how you did it. It's a mystical moment. And so these mystical moments, which are one's body in tune with nature and flow, are magnificent. You become complete and you become whole. And these are the moments I search for. And I believe everyone can search for these moments. And it really gives life a beautiful quality and a beautiful flavor. And it's built on these moments of mystery, the mystical moments, when you become fully involved with nature itself and things open up. The truth opens up. So this tells me there's another truth. There's another layer of truth which we have to search for. If I read Rumi, or if I read Wordsworth even today, Wordsworth surprisingly more than in the past, you get in touch with nature. The great poets have found themselves in nature and have found a language to communicate with nature, and nature becomes, that's why we love their poetry. So I think the language we all use is a very aggressive and unpleasant language. We need to use our language with a greater finesse to conjure up the mysteries of life and to reveal the mysteries of life, to reveal our character, our soul, our emotion. And I think everybody can do this if we become honest to ourselves. We speak with honesty and integrity and meaning and hope and passion and love. We become who we are, and the other person you're speaking to becomes who they are too. Sometimes that fails, and it annoys people, irritates people, that degree of opaque, that openness. But I think the only way to achieve the future, which we have to achieve after this COVID, is to achieve a new future, is through honest dialogue, through appropriate language, through an awareness that we're not just this, but something else. Then we can move the world forward. And because I'm speaking to you in Pakistan, I think about Pakistan, what has been revealed in these last few weeks? The potential of your country. It's unbelievable what Pakistan could become. Quite unbelievable. But you don't know it because you are it. Someone outside has to see it for you and encourage you to see it and feel it and become the possibility. And what are your possibilities of Pakistan? Are you going to become a county of China? Are you going to remain a county of America? Or are you going to become Pakistan? Because I don't think you've even become Pakistan yet. You don't know who you are. I know you're an Islamic country, God bless, but you haven't become yourselves yet. And your potential is enormous. And every individual in your country can play a part in this new future. And you've got to release the young. You know, that huge demographic zone of between 9 and 19, better between 9 and 15, really. If you can open them up to the future, you could persuade them to see and feel nature and to become with the character and identity which a nation state has to be. I mean, you do have a spirit. Every nation has a spirit. Please believe me, you have a spirit. You've got to find the Holy Spirit within your society and live within that. And it's not about greed or avarice. It's about giving. It's about sharing. It's making the collective whole a greater place to be. Being a better person, being a better country, being a better neighbor. It's all there. But we have to understand our capacity, and it's enormous. So this program, I think, could put Unlocking the Human Potential. Unlock it. It's unlocked. COVID has unlocked our human potential. The possibilities are unimaginable. But you have to grasp the moment and decide who you want to be as an individual and as a nation. You have to decide what you want to be. And if you see it, you'll become it. What you admire, you become, you absorb. Sometimes I think I'm Beethoven. Clearly I'm not Beethoven, but I know what he's saying through his notes. We have to learn to hear the other language, the language of mystery. I can't do that in Urdu. I can't do that in any of the subcontinental languages, but it's there. The truth is there in your language. But we obscure it. We obscure it by greed, avarice, and all these things that block human emotion. So there's a journey to be made and a future to be had, and it's yours. You've got an identity in Pakistan. Recognize what it is and become a great nation. That was a rant, wasn't it?
Oh, very well.
Not a rant. Not a rant. Some heartfelt insight, I would think. And I'm back, folks. Sorry about that. All the way from London, and we can't keep a stable internet connection.
Sad, isn't it?
This is sad. John, you mentioned the magical word. You mentioned many magical words, but one magical word, awareness. Everyone is talented. You know it, I know it, Cameron knows it, Ali knows it, and a lot of people that are listening in know it. The problem is we doubt ourselves in how talented we are. For one thing, the Pakistan community, when you go to school, they do O-levels and A-levels and degree courses. They study in English. What country in the world studies to level 4 and level 5 in a foreign language? I mean, we certainly don't. The Americans don't. All of Europe doesn't. They study in their own language. Have you any idea how amazing that really is? I'm not talking to John here. I'm talking to everyone else, really, because we know how amazing it is. But have you got any concept of how amazing that simple fact is? Any thoughts?
Personally?
Yeah.
It's control, isn't it? The search has not yet been made in other languages for the truth. And this is why, if I may be indelicate here, the United States regards Iran as a strange place. But Iran is in fact a flower of truth and knowledge and wisdom, which very few people understand. And it's a very old nation. I mean, so the history is, as you know, immense. Pakistan's a very young nation. And as you say, it's educated itself amongst the educated elite in the English language, which they speak beautifully. Often, I much prefer speaking to a Pakistani educated English-speaking person than to the English, because I better get a better quality of conversation and a better use of grammar and syntax. It's amazing. So in many ways, much of what I know about English literature, I learned from my Pakistani and Indian friends. It's amazing. So I'm the beneficiary, this English-speaking person, of those who've learned their studies through English, and they've shared it with me. So that's added to my depth of knowledge and interest as well. So it's an amazing thing. What is to be revealed in Urdu? I have no idea. What sciences, what ideas, what visions, what possibilities? Once they start speaking in that language about the future, maybe they do. I don't know. It's a huge,
if I just add up a supplementary question to what Mr. Neville asked. Yes, in Pakistan, Mr. Hillbery, English proficiency and English medium schools, this is all absolutely, and there's a great advantage that we are producing a very professional fleet of educated people who can, very well converse in English. But equally, this has caused, I don't know what sort of damage, but there is a sense of inferiority for those who are not well versed in speaking English. And this is sort of being taken as a disadvantage for them to come in the society and compete and build that level of confidence. And it comes down all back to their attitude. And that's where even Neville and I are working with few young Pakistanis in improving their proficiency, not just as a spoken English, but to get rid of that inferiority. If you can't speak because you're reading English, you're writing English, but even if you're not able to speak it well in the public, that doesn't mean that you're inferior to others. Now, coming back to your experience, you as from Portugal, starting at the age of 14 in Swedish, in the CN, turning out to be a director of communication in American Bank. Tell us what these youngsters need to learn.
Tell us what? I'm sorry, Ali. I didn't hear you.
What would you say to these youth people who are suffering from this inferiority that we are not well spoken, in English?
It's a very, very profound question. First of all, we're dependent upon love as children. If we don't see love, if we don't experience love, we will not be able to share love or give love or recognize love. So parenthood is prime. That is the first point of education, the first point of morality, the first point of faith. So we have to recognize the importance of parenthood and pay homage to it, and also prepare people for parenthood. No one is prepared for parenthood. The most important task in the world is the only subject which is not taught to anybody. We all get by. So in the first instance, we know if we're going to become parents, how important that task must be. As far as the young individual is concerned who has a lack of confidence because in speaking English it's not sufficient, I think one has to insist eventually on the superiority of the indigenous language. And I think English should become the second language in Pakistan over time. And you must increase and utilize the beauty of the language to reveal yourself. And one should never feel inadequate. I live in Portugal, I speak rather inferior Portuguese. And I cannot express myself philosophically or spiritually in the language. I get by. But it's very unsatisfying to me to talk at length about any subject of real meaning to a Portuguese person. So I understand exactly what you're saying. And one can only overcome that by becoming what you are and where you are. And if you're in Pakistan, you have to become fully Pakistani and fully part of your culture. The English American culture is the foreign one. It'll enable you to do other things. But education has to be changed in many, many ways for all of us. That's the future. This is the beginning. Identify who you are, what you are, and express it in your own language, first of all.
Very well.
John, you mentioned we're not taught to be parents.
Yeah.
I'm a few years younger than you, but I've already got my bus pass. So at 61, I sort of qualified to be a parent, I think, having 3 children of my own and 2 stepchildren.
Sure.
But there isn't anywhere in the world where we are taught to be a parent.
No.
And some of us were lucky enough to have our own parents around when our children were born. And I can remember going back that far and saying, we're moving around now, when my wife was, heavily pregnant, 9 months waiting, we're moving around now, and we've got this thing called a bucket in the back of the car, which was a car seat for the child that was going to be born. And then 3 days later, all of a sudden, you've got this 8 or 9 pound living being that is totally dependent on you. Absolutely totally dependent on you, and they require unrequited love. Yeah, you're forced to give it. If you don't give it, then they're no child of yours, fundamentally. We suffered for the first 9 months. Our firstborn had colic, so she hardly ever slept. But there were lots of books written on the subject. If your child's ill, you do this. Dr. Zeus would say something over here. But I'm going back 34 years almost. It's almost as though it was a completely different world that just opened up overnight. And the other thing is, although my parents were around, and my wife's parents were still around, they weren't overnight. You had that child overnight. So it was 24 full on. And like any usual family of that age, the father went to work and the mother stayed at home and looked after the children. But we're not taught this. So how do you think we muddle through?
On our animal instinct. I mean, it's the most, if you watch the nurture of any animal, bird in the nest, it's animal instinct. That's how we muddle through. But because we are not birds or foxes or badgers or beavers or whatever it is, we really have not yet understood what our first education should be if ever we're going to come together and create children. So we've avoided the greatest subject of all. It's extraordinary, quite extraordinary. I've lost everybody, I think.
No, you haven't.
No, you're still here. We can hear
You're
you.
very much here, John. And talking of muddling through and taking a cue from Neville, I just wanted to understand in terms of how much, if you were to look at your 80 years, how much of what you are is luck and how much is conscious, determined finding and discovery?
One could call it luck, but I think it's fate, and I think it's destiny, and I think it's God. It's certainly nature. It's certainly nature. But if you have the courage or the innocence and perhaps the ignorance to enter into the world with some basic moral principles, wherever they come from, then somehow you get by. So I think good principles, good manners, just the simple old-fashioned stuff gets you into the world and gets you by a little bit. Some faith gets you by a lot more. To develop your intuition is absolutely essential, because then you can protect yourself if you have great intuition. That's why one has to become fully sentient, fully aware of our surroundings and the people around us. Then we have to discern. And of course, in my travels as a young man, I had a sense of discernment. I could sense danger, feel this was a bad road to go down. This was not a person I need to associate with. I made mistakes, of course. We all make mistakes. But in the main, I was protected by discernment, discretion, manners, some principles, some moral codes of conduct, and my respect for my parents, who I didn't want to let down.
And so if I may ask, in this journey, how many mentors have you had? And could you share a few stories of your mentors along the way? Because I feel they play a part in our discovery, in our growth. Your take on that?
So many. I think of my first, right back, I remember all of them. Gary Hunt was a friend of mine who was half a Barbadian neighbor. He went on to become chairman of one of Britain's largest companies, and in fact became when that very famous fellow who had the program Stars at Night retired, whose name I forget unfortunately, Gary Hunt became the professor of the Stars at Night program on BBC. So Gary was around my infancy. He played a part. I didn't know how he was so clever. He was just very clever. I listened with great attention. At sea, there was a sailor called Quintero Gonzalez who had a scar down one cheek and a patch on one eye, who spoke awful language. I mean, just extraordinary, and scared the life out of me when I first met him, who became a wonderful friend, companion, and ally at sea and in difficult situations. I grew up with a fellow called Roger Judge, who became a nuclear physicist. He was a lad on the streets with me. He went off to Cape Canaveral. He worked on the first moonshot. He became a nuclear physicist. And he said to me when he went to university, "I'll come around the world with you, John, when you go." I said, "No, don't do that. Go to university. You're a clever guy. I'll go around the world." I said, "Right, you go around the world. You tell me what you've learned, and I'll tell you what I've learned." And he shared with me his knowledge of physics, nuclear physics.
Wow.
And then, of course, there was a man called Fremantle at the Financial Times. Well, then I was getting on a bit, but he was a historian. He was a linguist. He was a specialist in the Middle East. And because I had the freedom to go to the Middle East, I took him with me as my sort of paid-for guide. And I studied the Middle East with him, my wife, Louisa. I mean, she is a font of wisdom and deep understanding of the very nature of being.
May I ask a personal question, John? Sorry to interrupt you. Is
Yes.
Louisa formally educated, or is she also like you, searching and communing with nature? Just as
Louise
a
spent all of her time communing with God.
wow.
She was brought up in the Catholic Church. I didn't realize the extent to which she was when I met her when I was 19, off that ship I referred to. I just thought she was a very beautiful, very well-dressed woman. I didn't realize she was a deeply, deeply, deeply religious.
Wow.
And so as 60 years of marriage have gone by, I've discovered I'm living with a quasi-saint, an extraordinary woman of such depth and profundity. I wouldn't want to unleash her upon you, because she touches the very essence of everything, and it's deeply shocking. So
Wow.
she's a natural theologian, very, very closely linked to her Catholic faith, and has discourse with God hourly.
Wow. Thank you so much. And I suppose in the list of mentors, she must be figuring somewhere.
Somewhere in there. But there have been many. Beethoven is a mentor of mine. Beethoven has taught me so much. Tolstoy taught me so much. My time in Pakistan with BCCI, working with that extraordinary group of people, I learned so much. In California, working out of San Francisco, and having my weekends free, traveling up and down the West Coast, taught me a lot. Being alone in the desert, being alone in the woods, being alone in the mountains. I've been a mountaineer too. I've had some pretty scary moments and some very extraordinary mentors when I've been climbing. So it's learning all the time, and it's being open to learning. But there have been many, and I remember them all very well.
John, if I may, we're very fortunate to have two participants amongst us. One is Ciara, whom you introduced me to, who went to China and is fluent in Mandarin and was sharing her culture in one of the programs, What Now? And there's another lady who has joined us as well, the young lady from Sindh I was talking about, Rumesa. And I would like, certainly for them, to say a few words so that we get to know them in this forum. And if we can start with Ciara, I don't know how to pronounce her name. Kira, to just share with us her discoveries and how did she unlock her potential and what led her to go to China in the first place, and to go so deep and so intense.
Hi, sure. Thank you for the introduction. So my journey to China was simply, originally, I saw the way the economy was going, and I thought the opportunities there were going to be, there were going to be more and more opportunities there. So I thought I'd follow that and see what doors would open. Now, to understand a culture, to understand a country, to understand anything about the people in depth, of course, it starts with the language. And so I started to learn Mandarin. And then I took myself off there with very, very basic Mandarin, practically not being able to speak any. And I spent two years there. Well, I've now spent 3 years there in total, but 2 years initially. And during those 2 years, again, like John, I found that actually I learned all about the language, all culturally, all about the people in depth outside of the classroom, like all of you have experienced. But yeah, so I did have essentially a formal education at the same time, but to really understand the culture, and they are incredibly complicated people because their culture goes back such a long way. I mean, they have such a long history, and there is so much that has influenced their culture over time. And I mentioned in the video, and I've mentioned to John several times, so much now is ingrained in them and in what they say, to the point where they don't even realize actually why they're saying it. That thought process isn't coming from their own thought process. It's been ingrained in them, and so they're relaying those thoughts and those words. And to the extent where I communicated that I thought they're incredibly spiritual without realizing it. I'm sure you've all heard of Taoism and Confucianism, and Buddhism, which is also very prevalent there. But mostly Taoism and Confucianism is already within their bones, already within everything, their every movement, their every action, their every behavior. And Taoism goes to the extent as taking them into nutrition and the way in which they look at things and the way in which they contemplate things. So this for me was really my experience, and my understanding of the country, the people and the language was very much through, I chose to go to the area which in most of the dynasties, the emperor chose to be the capital city because of the feng shui within that city. And feng shui actually literally means wind, water, but it's looking at the mountain, it's looking at the placement of the mountain and the water and the layout in that area, so everything being balanced, yin and yang, as they say as well. So I chose to go to this really traditional, authentic city, which is currently tier 3. And it's just preserved so much of its traditional culture. And other cities, you can see that it's really moving away, and it's moving closer towards some Western, it's brought in some Western ideologies, and it's had some Western influence, i.e. Shanghai especially. Sorry, I've diverged from the question. But so
if I may interject, what led you to take such a huge step in the first place? I mean, you were so comfortable in England and you were doing your stuff. What led you to take this huge plunge? That's how did you unlock your potential?
Well, so the initial thoughts were because of the way that the economy was going. But really, I think there's slightly more than that, in that when I was younger, I grew up in an area in London, which is quite a rough area, actually, Croydon. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. And I always thought there was something different, something missing. I was always very curious about other cultures. So I come from a mixed cultural background as well. My mum grew up in the Middle East, and then she went through the apartheid in South Africa. So I think I'd had a very kind of cross-cultural upbringing. And I'd always been curious about speaking with other people. I'd done a lot of traveling. So along my journeys, along my experience, I'd met different people. I'd listened to different people. Wow. And I think there's more than that as well. I'd say almost there's definitely some spiritual connection there, because I find it easier to connect with Chinese people than I do with English people or Western people.
Thank you. I mean, John, her journey and yours sounds in some ways very, very similar. The curiosity, the cultures, the desire to know, to find out. And this lady, Rumesa, who is with us, could you unmute and give us your sense of what you're doing? She's going to graduate in LLB very soon and has a passion to serve in a manner which will inspire all of us. So Rumesa, could you say a few words about when did you discover the spark that you possess?
Hello, am I audible?
Hi. Yes, you are.
Yes, Rumesa, we can hear you.
Perfect.
2 minutes, and then we'll go back to Ali and John. Thank you. The question is, what makes you what you are? How come you are so driven? And where are you taking your life going forward? Rumesa.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Kamran, for giving me a chance and in order to introduce myself. So before, one thing that I would like to add before going forward, before meeting Mr. Kamran Rizvi, I was finding a word to describe myself, because obviously I can describe in 1,000 sentences, but I was looking for a single word to summarize myself. So he just gave me a name recently. He said, a lifelong learner. So from that day, or in fact, you can say from that moment, I start describing myself in just one word, that a lifelong learner. So before that, I was very jumbled up with so many words. Sometimes I'd be like, I I'm a better that personality, I'm better that person. But then I come up with the conclusion that there can be no other word best fitted for me than a lifelong learner. And now coming back to my background, so as being a learner, I have something really unique about me, but something that I'm supposed to do, or something that any person is supposed to do in the life. I grew up in, I was obviously reading comments in the chat as well. People were talking about formal degrees and formal education over here. So I struggled a lot in my academic background, and then I improved my academic background with the help of non-academic education, with the help of informal education. And then I grew up with being described, with stereotypes, because the kind of a community and the kind of village I belong to. So I end up hearing with a lot of people that stop describing yourself with that community because you don't look like, because obviously that was being considered as underprivileged. But then when I went to discover the realities, I literally found out that the reality is very poles apart. It's very different. And then when I developed a passion to work for communitism, when it was a moment when I got to know that if you want to prove yourself, or if you want to satisfy your inner self, you just have to work for your community. If you're doing that very well, you do not need to justify yourself once you die. You do not have to justify people what you have done in your entire life. So I started my degree in law. I did my O levels, then I did my A levels. Then I went into advocacy. I went into legal field. It was not to be a criminal lawyer. It was not to do litigation. It was just to know my basic rights, just to know the human rights so that I can convey the same to the people who are not aware. So a lot of people end up asking me that what specialization I just want to do in a law. So I just summarize it in a way that just to know my human rights and just to make people aware of it. That's it. I don't want to filter anything else from those long and a bundle of books. That's it. I just want to filter that, and once I'll be able to do that, I'm happy. So then I started doing different sessions, different social activism, and then youth activism, and social talks in different places in my community.
Okay,
in
Rumesa,
my city.
thank you. 1 second. I would like John, because John raised a point at the start of his talk, and the talk was that Pakistan has immense potential. And Rumesa, you're from Sindh, from a very remote village, and you're currently living in Karachi. John, this lady, and I'd like you to, you've heard some of what she has said, and it appears to me that she's your student, because your messaging and her action is pretty much there. Now, could you ask her about that, the demographic question that you were raising, and how, and what role can people like her and her play in this regard? And Kiara is here with us, and of course, she's also a very young future talent for us. I mean, we're very fortunate to have such individuals emerge. So John, over to you.
Well, that was absolutely delightful and so revealing. The enthusiasm, the intelligence, the energy, which I've just heard, and the passion was wonderful. This is where and how Pakistan will fulfill itself in this type of understanding and commitment. I would like to ask, how do I pronounce the young lady's name, please?
Rumesa.
Rumesa. It seems to me that the demographic of Pakistan represent its future, that you have 25 million people or more between the age of 9 and 25. And I believe that to educate and to mold in the best possible way the future, you mold those who become the future. Do you think that you can play a part in the education of this new generation at the basic level of its education, so that it imbibes very early on the qualities and the interests of making a better society, Is that the role you wish to play? Obviously, your human rights were very important to study and to understand what your rights were. Are you going to play a role in education? Can you help that emerging young generation, large young generation, full of potential, full of possibility? Are you going to guide it? And are there others like you who can guide it? Rumesa? Rumesa?
Yes, Rumesa, if you may answer the question if you've heard it. Rumesa, you there?
Hello.
Yes, Rumesa.
Rumesa, did you hear the question from John? Rumesa, did you hear the question from John? Hello, are you there?
Rumesa, you still there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Did you hear
Yes.
the question from John?
I'm sorry, my bad. I think there was something wrong with my connectivity, so I just missed that. But
No
can you please
problem.
come again?
No problem. John, if you can just be very brief with your question, what can she do? I mean, I'll let you ask the question.
Rumesa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
What is your future now with your capacity, with your intelligence, with your desire to learn, to know and to share, to give and to improve? Do you think you can help this new youngest generation in Pakistan to formulate its early part of its education, to give it an early direction in what is appropriate, right and good? Because it's about becoming a good society and an efficient society that Pakistan will grow. It's the way the world will grow. What role do you plan to play in this development? Are you going to get involved with that education?
Sure. Thank you so much for this such a productive question. What I believe, I think every individual, regardless of whatever background you come from, regardless of whatever community, whatever country, whatever nation, whatever ethnic background you come from, there is one thing which is really similar to all the human beings, and that is capabilities, skills, knowledge. What I see myself playing a role in is just a single area, that is to just let you to influence you to such a greater extent so that you can just have that a wish, a desire to go inside yourself and explore and trigger what is inside you, and just do it with that. My part will be just limited to that. Rest is just, you're going to be the pilot of your own aeroplane, going to just do it. But it's just, I will just play my part to influence, to let you know that yes, there is something to just bring it to your psychology that yes, you can do. Yes, actually there is something, and you just have to trigger that. And for that, I would use every opportunity, because that's what I am doing. Whatever opportunity comes in my way, I just use it in that way, so that I can just make an influence. I can just make my contribution to the other's life. So in future, it's the same. I really hope that I continue with the same spirit. I continue with the same passion. And in future,
Thank
whatever
you.
opportunity comes in my way, I just use that to influence others.
Thank you, Rumesa. And John, I mean, what do you make of her answer, number one? And Ali, YP2G graduate is already marked for you. And Neville, you must be the most delighted at this point in time, because we've found
Neville is having a
language.
little technical glitch and he's apologizing, but he's there. Somehow there's an issue. But
all right, so
yes,
John,
before John answers, I was very pleased to hear the word, the can-do attitude. This is what I have summarized with what Rumesa has just said. She has just demonstrated how she has that inbuilt can-do attitude, which she has been practicing throughout.
Absolutely. So John, what do you make of Rumesa? And I'll put you in touch with her later, if Rumesa is okay, so that you can exchange some thoughts later on. So John, over to you.
Well, I would very much like to have a long dialogue with her. I thought it was myself speaking. I couldn't imagine anybody to speak with such clarity about my own purpose in life. It was a representative of my own personal ambition. So I've met a soulmate, a twin, amazing. Quite amazing. I just wonder what date she was built. What was her birth date? That's what I'd like to know.
Rumesa is 21, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Rumesa?
Yes, I to be exact, it's 31st August 1999.
Very good. Okay, fantastic. Well, congratulations. Every success. Your passion, your commitment, and your intelligence is needed, and you must share it. And your good heart, share your good heart with as many people as you can. Bless you.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
And Ali, is Neville back, or because I was looking at the
Neville,
time and I
let's
thought
see if
that
let me try to unmute him. He was having little issues with the connectivity. I see his name is still there.
Yeah.
So Neville, if you can just have audio.
Yeah, I've got audio. I do apologise. I mean, of all places, London, you would think, would have a decent broadband. But,
it can happen. It can happen. Neville,
it would appear the cable has defeated us.
Yeah, but you heard, Neville, you heard Rumesa, and what can we say? I mean, she's the perfect ambassador for YP2G.
As John said, you know, he's listening to himself. I have a funny feeling that the three of us are listening to each other. Perhaps a slightly different language from a different age group, but it goes back to what John said earlier. We're all talented. We just need to. Someone just needs to let us find the key that allows us to unlock ourselves. I mean, it's as simple as that, really. COVID has, in some respects, bizarrely, has given us that key because we've had 12 weeks of introspection in many respects, because although we've been able to talk to each other like this, there's been lots of personal time. And some people have used it very wisely. And I was just thinking, and I put a note in the group, it's us oldies that need to give young people the confidence to get with us and talk with us and help them not just develop their voice, but find the way they can collectively have a voice.
Yes.
We've heard a lot of global warming. I don't want to get into the science of this, but clearly mankind has done something pretty fundamentally bad to the planet. But COVID has actually, in a very short period of time, filled the ozone layer, changed the air quality, and perhaps we've now seen that the planet will recover irrespective of what we do. It's up to us now to recover. I'm not quite sure what that means, frankly, but it certainly means being better than we were yesterday.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if I may just now, looking at the time, but John, if you allow us, we have our regular attendee, Mr. Zafar Usmani. I'm not sure if he's still there or he's left. He had a couple of questions. Let me see. Here we go. Gee, Zafar Saab, if you're still there, if you would like to ask a question, there we go. We have Mr. Zafar Usmani is also a senior banker, ex-director HR for Habib Bank Limited and CEO of Karachi Electric Supply, and a regular. He runs his own shows and a great partner. So,
thank you so much, Eddie. Thank you for, first of all, congratulations to you, Kamran and Neville, for continuing and persevering with this beautiful learning opportunity for all. And really a big thanks to John for a very fascinating, unusual, normally we get speakers who bring in a lot of wisdom and learning from others' learnings, not so much from internally, intrinsically, thought through, followed meditation, 4 hours on the beach. And, that's something really fascinating, because that is self-discovery of your own. And, you are one example of all of us. So every one of us have that opportunity of exploring oneself, which we normally do not do. I mean, our learning starts very early at the school. We are taught what we are taught. Even at the home, we are told what is to be done and what is not to be done, not to ask questions to seniors. Our education system forces us a wisdom and discourages us to think openly and question our teachers, our professors. And that's unfortunately the whole education system. And there are books written there, several years back, which are based on classical wisdom. Our professors come and teach us who have learned from their professors, plus some research work. It's really, Corona, in my opinion, has opened a completely new era in human civilization. In terms of the connectivity, in terms of being able to learn, and frankly speaking, the last few weeks, the immense learning I've done, and I have the ability to sit, I don't have to travel anywhere to listen to the wise words and the philosophies or thinking like John. It doesn't have to be an organized conference, seminar where you travel and you learn. It's all gone. That paradigm is gone now. So everyone is available all the time. And it's really, so my own feeling and some of the points I was bringing up in the chat was, when you talked about, our own creation and learning, I think human creation, as Hawa has also mentioned, the three streams, like the plants and the animals and human. So human is a different creation, because there are some instinctive things, we learn, which is about survival, about food, about shelter and everything. But there's a lot of it that goes on, John, and I wish that we get more of you here. In terms of our, some instinctive emotional needs, the need of appreciation, the need of recognition, which is to a certain extent observable in animal, but really very well developed in a human being. So we, even as a child walking a few steps, we don't even actually realize that we exist, our existence, but we do look for appreciation. When we take the first step, we look around people to clap. And from there, this desire comes in, it's built in, it's part of our genetic or creative configuration. And you move on to that. And then I mentioned on the chat, the emotions of love, hate, jealousy, killing, nurturing, protecting, all these instincts that come into us as humans. We have the potential, we have the immense potential to understand, leverage, and expand on that. But what happens is that we become a victim of, actually a slave of our own ego and our own, we still not being able to answer the basic question, what is the purpose of our own life? Are we living for ourselves or we are living for others? So I find myself entangled. A lot of the times I'm doing things to create perception in others' mind about myself. And others, for them, I don't matter. So I can do that. It may have a short-term thing, but my entire behavior and existence is driven by that. Very few people have seen who have been able to liberate from this level. And they have achieved a different kind of contribution, value addition to the world, who have been able to liberate themselves from their ego. So these are very interesting things. And John, it's really fascinating to have you. And hopefully we'll get more. And this is you are, sir, one of the benefits of COVID-19. I'll just say that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The idea was just to raise some food for thought.
Thank you very much. Very nice.
So Ali, could you take us to the close with John giving us his parting messages, which will certainly resonate with us for some time, and we'll not let him go off so easy. We might be calling him again to inspire a lot of other groups that we get together. Thank you.
Absolutely. And if I may, because I know I won't be able to do a justice as John himself would be able to do it. So John, if I may request you to just conclude, any quick concluding remarks just to summarize before we dismiss out.
It occurs to me that if we become more than what we are as individuals, and we become more of what we are able to be in our best self, nature and the earth will respond. If we give our best selves to the world, if we give our best selves to each other, if we give our best selves to our communities, then nature will rejoice, we will become wiser, we'll become better human beings. And I think that's what we're here for. We must make a deeper search. We must search for our relationship with nature, and if we have the courage with God. But this is the inner journey. We must find out what our capacities are and then share them. And the key words, of course, are love, true love, compassion. But as we grow in our capacity to become more effective and efficient human beings, we must not allow the ego to grow. We must find humility, because without humility, all that I've just said will become solid. So it's in the honesty and the integrity of one's desire for others, which is the mission that we have as individuals. And if we're always working for the benefit of others, thinking for the benefit of others, then we will have a better world and a better future.
Beautiful. That's just beautiful. And
Thank you, John.
thank you very much, John. And thank you, everybody on this panel. Zafar Saab, Kamran Bhai, and Neville, and Ramesa, and Ciara joined this program. And special thanks to John all the way from Portugal. Before we dismiss out, John, I would like you to show us the view once again that the place that you're sitting at. And it's just, Zafar Saab, you might want to see where he's sitting at. And this is Portugal. Zierra, John, that's Zierra, right? Just 40 minutes away from Lisbon.
Zebra.
Zebra, 40 minutes away
Awesome.
from Lisbon. So this is where he is. And I asked him in the beginning when he showed me that such a lovely place to sit as a retired person. And he just immediately said that you never retire. You never retire from learning things. You never retire from working. And it's a part of, whole-fledged life that you continuously do something in life. And this is how he has lived a life full, rich of experience. And what I just would like to conclude in what I've heard and what John has said and what everybody has said about inner purpose, finding concentration, meditation, about your inner self. I believe it was Stephen Covey who said very nicely that we are not human beings having a spiritual experience in this world. We are rather spiritual beings having a human experience in this world. So this is where we are today. So with that note, I would like to end and conclude. So you all have a good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you have dialed in from. Thank you very much, Mr. John Hillbery, once again, Zafar Saab, Kamran Bhai, Neville, and all the audience for lovely comments and chats. It was lovely to have you all here, and stay tuned for our next episode next week, Monday, same time, 5:15 p.m. on Unlock Your Potential. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum.
Thank you.